Okay. You can also ask the question inside inside the Q&A. You can also feel free to ask the questions over there. I'll also provide you the access for the few members, but always remember that you can keep yourself in the mute status. Only you can unmute when you require to ask any kind of questions. Okay, but questions I'll take it at the end, which will be in the last 30 minutes of time. Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I think we have a few numbers of people available over here. So I hope you people are able to see my screen and able to hear me properly.
Yes, Praveen.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and see the next part of the things that we have over here. So yesterday we have gone through with the recap of the installation. We have also set up our things over here inside the Visual Studio Code. I've also written a first program that we generally go and write inside any of the programming language, right? So again, wherever you feel like my screen is not visible or I am not properly audible, please stop me or please interrupt me in at that point of time itself. Okay. So as a part of course content, we'll see that we'll be going through with the variables. How do we declare the variables in terms of JavaScript and TypeScript? How do we define the variables? What are different types of variables that we can define inside the JavaScript and TypeScript? And certain questions will be asked as a part of the interviews that will also go in our today's session over here. Okay, make it interactive. If I ask you any kind of questions, either you can message inside the Q&A, or you can, whoever have got unmuted, you can also speak over there. Okay, so let's go ahead and see that in terms of a JavaScript and TypeScript, whenever we try to create any file or whatever you say as a class or file, in JavaScript and TypeScript, it is known as a files. It is known as a spec file. That means specification file. Whenever you create any file inside a JavaScript or TypeScript, or any class inside a JavaScript or TypeScript, it is known as a file. So even to print a single line of code inside the Java, we have to create a class. Right? We have to generally create a class, then write a public static void main string args, and then print it inside by using system.out.println. Whereas in terms of JavaScript and TypeScript, we do not require any such things. We can simply create a file without creating any class. Then you can also write some kind of programs or test automation as well. Okay, so here we have certain things which we have written is console.log. So console.log is a command which used to print something on the console. Whatever you have to print on the console level at the time of running the program or at the time of test automation. If you would like to print on the browser level, at that point of time we can. What is browser level? When we talk about a browser level, that means when you go and do an inspect, do not worry, I'll talk about this. This is known as a console, right? So here also you can print it by using simply console.log. Let's say you can just write it as test over here. Console.log and simply make it as a test. If you click enter, it will just return us a value which it has printed over here as a test. Okay, that means whenever you try to print something on the console level, either at the browser console or whatever the tools that you are using over here, there we can use a command known as console.log is a method which is available inside the console. And then it accepts certain parameters over here. It can be any kind of parameters, and that we can write it over here. You can write any type of data type as well. You can write like numeric values, you can write string values, you can also write any other things that you are to print it along with the console. So now if you try to print the value or execute this particular file, you can simply say that this is basically a part of like when you try to print this, you just have to write psx and then file name, which is like program dot first program dot ps over here. As soon as you hit enter, it displays that whatever we have given inside this console. Okay, so that's the thing that we have over here in terms of printing the value on the console. Just give me a minute. So here we have okay. So again, in terms of the course content that we have, we'll go through and check the variables that we have in terms of JavaScript and TypeScript. So let's create a file. So there are two ways in which you can create a file. And that means create a file over here inside your project. This is known as project or inside the folder over here. One, you can simply click on new file, which is this one. You can click on new text file or new file. And second is you can just hover over on your project name, or you can just come inside this particular place or layout. And then these three options will be visible. The first one is known as new files. Second one is to create a new folder. And third is to just refresh your Explorer. This is also known as Explorer. Okay, so you can click on this and this will allow you to enter the name over here. So you can just give the name of whatever the file that you are trying to create. Here we'll just mention it as variable.ps. Okay, and you can click enter so that this will identify as a dot. Now, whenever you give a .ts extension, at that point of time, it will identify that this is a TypeScript file. In case for any one of you, if it is not able to identify, in case for any one of you, it is not able to identify that this is a TS file or JS file. Okay. Then in that case, you can go to extension over here. You can go to this extension and then search option over here known as JavaScript. And simply search it as JavaScript. And this will display the option known as JavaScript ES6 code snippet. JavaScript ES6 code snippet. You'll get an option of install over here. I have already installed, so it is like disable and uninstall, but you'll get an option as install that you can install. What is the use of this? The use of this is whenever you try to write the code or write the file by using JavaScript, .js extension, .ts extension, or any other things that it supports over here, it will automatically identify that you have written the code by using JavaScript or TypeScript. Okay. Now, let's go and see what is generally a variable. Can anyone answer over here what is variable, or what do you understand by variable over here?
It is
Anyone
a
of you?
location which is used to store values.
So it is a location to store our values. Prashant, you're able to hear me? I see like you're saying that still not able to hear. I hope everyone is able to hear me, right?
Yes, Praveen.
So for this one that you have sent as a message, which is Prashant, we have discussed this, how do we resolve this in our previous session. So you can just go through with that and check how do we resolve this. We have also sent a command to resolve this particular things. Okay. So in terms of a variable, if you talk about a variable, what is variable is? Variable is, yes, whatever the answers that you people have given is correct in a one or other way. So variable is generally a storage. Variable is generally a storage. That means which store which can store either a single value or a multiple value. Store a single value or multiple values. Okay, so variable is a storage where you can either place a single values or a multiple values. Example, let's say if you have bag, right, or a laptop bag or backpack kind of things. So there you can place, let's say, one particular laptop. Okay, so that means your bag is basically storing one single value. And you also have a table where you can place some multiple items, let's say laptop, desktop. You can also place books and some other items. That is known as, that means you are storing multiple values on the table, right? So that becomes the again a storage. Your bag is also a storage which stores your laptop, and your table is also storage which stores your multiple items that you have stored over here. That is known as a storage. In terms of the programming language, also everything that we go or that we see in terms of our day-to-day life appears in terms of the programming language as well. Okay, so in terms of a variable, if we talk about, variable is a storage which either stores a single value or it stores a multiple values. Okay, now how do we define a variable? How do we generally define a variable in terms of JavaScript and TypeScript or any other programming language? In every programming language, there are certain ways in which we can define a variable. But what about in terms of JavaScript and TypeScript? Okay, so in JavaScript and TypeScript, there are three different ways in which we can define a variable. One, by using a var keyword. Var keyword, there are certain keywords that JavaScript and TypeScript has given to define the variable. If you are from the Java background, then you might be knowing that you have to provide the data type. You basically have to provide the data type, then variable name, and by using an assignment operator, you have to provide the value, right? Example, it can be, let's say, int I equals to 10. So what is int in terms of a Java is data type, I variable name, and value is 10 over here using the assignment operator, which is equal to symbol over here. Okay, in JavaScript and TypeScript, we have certain keywords that it has defined to declare a variable. One of them is var, second is let, and third is by using a const keyword. By either using a var keyword or by using a let keyword or by using a const keyword, you will be able to declare a variable in JavaScript and TypeScript both. Okay, now what could be the syntax? What could be the syntax to declare a variable? So if you see the syntax means the rules that it has defined by the programming language to declare something, to define something. Okay, so rules like even in our day-to-day life, the rules used to be, let's say if you have to start a car, right, you have to place the key inside the car and then you have to start by somewhere. Or if you have to start a bike, right, you either you have to press some kind of switch or some other things after entering the keys, right? So this used to be the rules. Rules have been defined by the whoever have created the bike or whatever the brand that you are going with the car, right? So that is generally a rules to start your car, right? In the same way, every programming language, to define certain conditions, to define certain things inside the programming language, for every definitions, it has given certain syntax, certain rules. You cannot ignore those kind of rules and then provide something. So example, let's say you cannot, in terms of Java and TypeScript, JavaScript and TypeScript, you cannot declare by using simply like this, which is int I equals to 10. Because this is not the rule that JavaScript and TypeScript has given. You cannot do in this way the declaration, right? But if you type it in this way, which is let I equals to 10, the error have been gone because it identifies that whatever the code that you have written is a TypeScript or JavaScript code. Right? So this is a rule. This is known as a rule that it has given to define something. Okay. In that way, if you see the syntax is basically a rule to define the variables over here. How do we define the variables as a part of the syntax? If you see the syntax, there we can write first a keyword. First is a keyword. The keyword can be var or let or const. Any one of them you can define it over here out of these three. Now I'll also talk about when can we use var, when can we use let, when can we use const. There are certain things that we have to remember to use var, let, and const. I'll talk about that. But the syntax is first we have to write a keyword. Keyword can be var or let or const. And then this will be a variable name over here. Variable name. Any of the keyword, then variable name equals to, that means this is an assignment operator. We have to assign the value to a variable, and then this will be a value over here. This is the syntax for JavaScript. This is the syntax for JavaScript. Okay, which is keyword, any kind of keyword that you can use, either var, let, or const, variable name, assignment operator, which is equals to, and then value. Now, what about in terms of TypeScript? This is for JavaScript, and there is, earlier I was talking about what is the difference between JavaScript and TypeScript, right? So this is one of them, the difference over here. So the syntax in terms of TypeScript is the similar things, exactly same things, which is keyword, var, let, or const, variable name, and TypeScript. Not mandatory, it is optional, but it allows us to also enter the data type of the variable that you are trying to store over here. In terms of TypeScript, it also allows us to provide the data type of the variable that you are trying to store the value over here. Okay, this is the difference between JavaScript and TypeScript. JavaScript will not allow you to define colon and then data type over here, whereas TypeScript will also allow us to make it as a type safe. That means you can define a variable by storing a numeric data type or string data type or any other values. The data type we'll understand in our next session. Okay, so this is the difference between a JavaScript and TypeScript, where TypeScript allows us that you can also declare the certain type of variable by defining a data type over here. Okay, but JavaScript does not allow us to write it the data type of the variable as well. But as I said, this is again completely optional. This is again completely optional. If you just remove this, then complete TypeScript code will become the similar to a JavaScript. Okay. Now let's also talk about when can we use var, let, and const. When can we use var, let, and const? In modern JavaScript and TypeScript. In modern JavaScript and TypeScript. What is modern JavaScript and TypeScript? The ES6 engine, which have been introduced in 2015. After that, we have stopped using a var keyword. Basically, ES6 stands for ECMAScript 6. This is one of our engine. That means a version of the JavaScript and TypeScript. Okay, this stands for ECMAScript 6, which have been introduced in 2015. Since then, the var keyword mostly we have stopped using. Okay, so in terms of modern JavaScript and TypeScript, we do not use this keyword. You do not use var basically. Why we do not use? There are certain errors or there are certain issues that we have in terms of var that we'll see in our today's session. Okay, now when can we use let keyword? Whenever we know that the value of the variable can change at later point of time. Value of the variable can change at any point of time or later point of time. At that point of time, we can use can be changed. At that point of time, we can use let keyword to define a variable. That means we have defined some values, but if the value of the variable can change at any point of time, then at that point of time, we have to declare a variable by using a let keyword. Okay. Example, let's say for var, you can simply say it as var I equals to 10. You can define it in this way as well, var I equals to 10. Okay. The second thing that I was talking about over here, var anyways will not be using, so let's not much concentrate on the var part over here, but I'll show you what is the issue with the var. If we talk about the let keyword over here, then let's say let j equals to 10 that we have defined over here. You know that the value can change at later point of time, which is j can become 20. At that, for that variable, we have to use a keyword known as let. Okay. But when can we use const? Const is also known as a constant, which is used to declare a constant variable. Basically, const is basically used to declare a constant variable. What is constant? Constant is a final variable. Constant variable is a final variable. What is final? So let's say currently IPL is going, right? So at one day there'll be a final match, right? Final match for IPL. And after the final, there will not be any match will be conducted for this particular IPL season, right? Because the final have been completed and someone have won over there. So that is what known as a final. Final means after that, nothing will happen. Final means after that, nothing will happen, right? And that is what known as a constant is. Constant is equals to final. That means once you define the values for a variable, that will never get changed. Okay. So whenever you try to define a variable which you know that which will never get changed, that means that is a constant. At that point of time, we can declare a variable using const over here. Example. So let's say if you just change it to, let's say I'll just comment this one. So if you just change it to const j equals to 10, okay, you have defined some kind of value. So this 10 becomes a final value. That means this is a constant. You cannot change this 10 at any point of time. So if you see over here, it throws us an error saying that cannot assign to j because it is a constant. Cannot assign to j because it is a constant. So constant variable or constant value, you cannot change at any point of time. Okay, that is known as a constant. So when we use a constant keyword, when can we use a const keyword? The const keyword we can utilize when we have to declare the constant keyword, constant variable. Okay. Now, if you see over here, I hope you people are getting the concept. Yes, no.
Yes, Praveen.
Okay. So now this is one more difference. So earlier I talked about TypeScript is a statically typed language, right? TypeScript is a statically typed language. That means statically typed language, whenever you use a statically typed language, which is Java, TypeScript, .NET, and so on, at the time of writing the code itself, it will throw us an error. At the time of writing the code itself, it will throw us an error saying that you have done some kind of mistake. You can see that it is saying cannot assign to j because it is a constant, right? It is throwing us an error, warning us saying that this is a wrong that you have written the code, right? JavaScript is a dynamically typed language. That means at the time of writing the code, that will not throw you any kind of error. But when you try to execute the code, at that point of time, it will throw you an error saying that you have written some kind of wrong statement inside your code. And that is the reason why most of the organization are going towards a TypeScript. So let's see an example. So if you just go and write variable.js, which we have created a file using JavaScript over here, and you can write the similar statement that we have written inside this one. Okay. Let me just change it to K so that it will not give us an error and define a K. Okay, so now in this case, if you see, it is not throwing us an error. Okay, so as a programmer, we'll understand that, okay, probably sometimes if you forget like what is the const keyword over here, so we'll understand that, okay, whatever the code that we have written over here is correct. And let's say if you just try to print the K over here, and you think that everything that you have written is correct, and you are trying to now execute the code. How do we run the JavaScript file? By using node space file name, right? So variable.js. Try to execute this at this point of time. It has given us an error at the line number 2 saying that assignment to a constant variable is not possible, right? So this is what the difference that we have. This is the second difference that we have in terms of JavaScript and TypeScript. In terms of a TypeScript, if you have done some kind of mistake, that will throw us an error at the time of writing the code itself, whereas JavaScript will throw us an error at the time of running your code, at the time of executing your code. Okay, that's the second difference that we have in terms of JavaScript and TypeScript. Okay, now let's try to understand in detail regarding different kinds of keywords over here, different scopings, different types of things that we can do with let keyword, const keyword, and var keyword. Now, first understand that there are the scoping part as well. Like whenever you try to declare a variable will have two different kinds of scope. One is in terms of a scope, the variable will have two different types of scope. One is a global variable that you can define, and second is a local variable that you can define. Global variable means these are the variable that you have defined is a global variable. That means you can use these variables at any places inside your file that you have created over here. Inside this file, you can use the variable or you can utilize these variable at any place. Okay, at any place you can use these variable inside your file, inside the function, outside the function, inside the statement, inside the loop, outside the loop, anywhere you can use these variable because these are a global variable, globally available inside your file. Inside this file, you can use these variable at any place. We'll talk about a local variable. Local variable will have a certain conditions. This has to be defined inside a curly braces, probably at the time of inside the curly braces. What is curly braces or block of code? Whenever you try to write anything, any of the code inside the curly braces is known as block of code. This thing that you see over here is known as a block of code. Okay. Whenever I use the terminologies or when someone else use the terminologies known as a block of code, that means they are referring to whatever the lines of code that we have written inside the curly braces. These braces that you see are known as curly braces. Starting curly braces and ending curly braces. Inside this, whatever the code that you have written is known as a block of code. Okay, so whenever you declare a variable inside the block of code, whenever you try to use any kind of variables, let's say by using a curly braces, you define a let k equals to 10. This k is a local variable. This is having a scope as local. That means what is in the local? Local you will not be able to access this outside of the curly braces. The scope of this particular variable become dead or get ends at the line number 27. That means at the end of the curly braces itself. Okay, so we'll also talk about the global and variable, global variable and basically global scope and local scope for all these keywords. Okay, let's go one by one. First one, we know that var will never be using, but it is one of our important interview questions that we have. That why do we not use var keyword, or what is the difference between var, let, and const keyword? This will be one of our interview questions. So let's also understand the var over here along with the let and const keyword. So first is a var keyword. we'll talk about the scoping of the var keyword over here, the scope. So scope that we have gone, that we have just understood that there will always be two types of scope for any kind of variable, either a global scope or a local scope. Okay, so whenever you try to declare a variable, using a var keyword, example this one. Okay, whenever you try to declare a variable using a var keyword, that variable will have a scope as either a global or a functional scope. Either a global scope or a functional scope. What is functional? That means inside the function. Functional means inside the function. Inside the function. Okay. So whenever you try to declare a variable by using a var keyword, that variable will have a scope as either a global or a functional scope. Functional scope known as inside the function. That means whenever you try to declare a variable inside the method or inside the function is known as a functional scope. Okay. Now let's try to understand the things over here. So let me just copy paste this one. So what we have declared is var I equals to 10. Right? Var I equals to 10. So this particular variable is having a global scope. Global scope. Why this is a global scope? Because we have not declared this inside the function. Whenever you try to declare a variable inside the function or inside the method by using a var keyword, that will have a scope as local scope. Example, do not worry, how are we trying to create a function? Function will take it in our later part of our session. So this is a function that I'm trying to write over here. Okay. And inside this function, if you try to declare some values, which is let's say equals to 20, this is having a local scope. Because we have declared a variable which is inside the curly braces, and also it is inside the function. As per the definition, whenever we try to declare a variable which have been declared using a var keyword will have a scope as either global or functional. If you declare it outside of the function, that will become a global scope. If you declare it inside of the function, that will become a local scope. Okay, any question till now? I hope you people are following the session.
Yes, Praveen. No questions. It's clear.
Okay.
Sir, I have a question. I was asking, like, I thought I asked in the Q&A too. In Java, right, we do create a class. Why don't we create a class here, like in JavaScript and TypeScript?
So that is what I said. In terms of a JavaScript and TypeScript, it is not mandated to create a class. Why it is not mandatory? Because it does not work on the class part. So every JavaScript is basically an object-oriented programming language, right? Java is basically an object-oriented programming language. In object-oriented programming language, everything will be an object itself. Everything will be an object. That means we have to create a class, and to access the properties and method, we have to create an object to access the properties. Right? JavaScript and TypeScript is basically a functional programming language.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
It is
I'll make
not
it.
right.
Okay, so that's the reason we don't need a class. Yeah.
Right.
And the difference between var, let, const, we use like var and const, right? Let and const more, not var.
Var will not be using, let and const will be using most of the time.
And const. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Yeah.
Praveen?
So if we'll be using var inside the curly braces,
Right. I'll just talk about those things, and we'll have also the question and answer after. If you do not understand anything after this particular discussion, like var, let, and const. Okay. So let's try to see all the properties of var, let, and const, and then we'll come up with the questions. Okay. So what var says that whenever we try to declare a variable which is outside of the function, that becomes a global scope variable. Global scope variable means you can free to use that variable at any point of time. You can bring this variable over here as well, which is var I, like console.log I, and you can also print the similar variable here as well, which is var I over here. Okay, console.log I. So this will also print the same value, which is 10, and here also it will print the same value, which is 10. Okay. This is a local variable. Local variable is having a scope inside the curly braces itself. So whenever it is having a scope inside the curly braces, you can make some kind of actions using that variable inside the curly braces itself. But if you try to access this outside of the curly braces over here, this will not be allowed. So we have written const j equals to over here. Now if you see this one, this is throwing us an error saying that cannot find name j. That means it is saying that I don't know where did you declare a j as a variable. Okay, so it is saying cannot find name j that you have declared inside this particular variable, because this is having a local scope, and the scope will be end at the line number 35. That means at the end of the curly braces. That means this j that it has been declared, this particular class or this particular file does not know that we also have declared a var j inside this particular file. Except inside this function, j will not be identifiable inside this file. Okay, that is known as a local scope. Now let's see in the real-time example what used to be a local scope and global scope. Okay, so here you can see that it has thrown us an error. It has given us an error. But if you see this variable, which is a global variable, you can use over here as well. You can use inside the function as well, and at any point of time you can use this. If you try to execute this will if you just try to execute this particular things by saying it as variable.ts, you can see that it has printed as a value. It has basically given us directly the value. Okay, we have not printed anything, so it has printed as a value which is 10 over here, and then it has given us a, okay, we have not called this particular function, so we have to call this particular function to get the result for whatever we have declared inside the function. Okay, so now you can see that it has printed as 10, which is at this point, this line. This 10 is coming from here, which is this 10, and this 20 is coming from here, which is this 20. But when we try to access this local scoped variable outside of the function, it has given us saying that j is not defined. It has basically thrown us error over here itself, which is j is not defined. Okay, now let's try to understand in a layman term what is local scope and global scope. Right? So let's say we are staying in India. Example, we are staying in India, and I have a passport, but let's say example, but I do not have any visa for any other countries. Okay, I have a passport, but I do not have any visa for any other country. That means I can freely go inside any of the states of our country, which is India. That means I can go to Hyderabad, I can go to Mumbai and any other places freely, because I am local to India, right? Because I am local to India, born and brought up inside the India. So I became a local, and that's where I'm freely available inside. I can use or I can travel inside anywhere in the India. As I do not have permission to go abroad, I do not have any kind of visa, so I will not be able to move anywhere other than India. Apart from India, I cannot go anywhere. That means this particular person is having a local scope available inside one particular country, and as this is not having any kind of permission to go outside of India, this will not be able to move outside of the India. That is what known as a local scope. But let's say if you have a visa for all the countries, that means you can globally go at any places. You can locally visit inside the India, and you can also globally visit anywhere inside the world. Okay, that is known as a global scope. That means you are freely available to move anywhere around the world. That means this particular file is considered as a world. Whenever you try to declare a variable which is having a permission to move anywhere inside the world, you can use this particular variable anywhere, either a local, which is inside India, or global, which is outside of the India as well. Okay, but this variable is having a local scope, which is not having any permission to go outside. This person can only visit inside the India. That means inside this particular function itself. Okay, that is what known as global or local variable or local scope variable.
Ravi, I have a question.
Yes.
While declaring the variables, you are not using any semicolons, but like while writing the
I was coming to
console
that one. I was coming to that
Oh,
one.
okay, fine.
Okay. So this semicolon that you see over here, at any point of time in terms of a JavaScript and TypeScript, it is not mandatory. Writing a semicolon in JavaScript and TypeScript is not mandatory. Then you might be having a question, how did I write over here? Okay, so I use a shortcut over here to print the console.log. Whenever you use a shortcut, it will automatically place the, you can see like CLG. As soon as I enter, it automatically plays semicolon over here. Okay, semicolon to end the line is not mandatory in JavaScript and TypeScript. Okay. Now let's try to understand why are we not trying to use var keyword to declare a variable. Why are we not trying to use a var keyword to declare a variable? Now, in general, in any of the programming language, we consider whatever we declared inside a curly braces, inside a block of code, will be considered as a local scoped variable. Okay, let's see an example over here. What I'm saying is let variable equals to, let's say, a TypeScript. Let variable equals to, I've defined a TypeScript. Okay. And I'm trying to make a condition over here. I'm trying to write if statement. If, let's say, 2 is greater than 1, that means I'm just trying to check some kind of condition, or I can directly put a true value over here. Okay. So if the condition is true, then whatever we write inside the curly braces will be executed. If the condition becomes false, then whatever we write inside the curly braces will not be executed for if statement. Okay, so what we are saying is a variable. So before going to this, let's understand the second point. That will make you understand it in a better way. So let's make it at a second point over here, which is whenever you try to declare a variable using a var keyword, whenever you try to declare a variable using a var keyword, that means I'll come to this point, whatever we are trying to discuss after this point. So variable declared using var keyword can be redeclared and can also be reinitialized. What is meant by redeclared and reinitialized? Okay, so let's see one example over here. So here let's declare var num equals to 10. What we have defined is we have just declared a variable using a var keyword. Right? We have just declared a variable using a var keyword, var num equals to 10. So the definition of var says that whenever you try to declare a variable using a var keyword, it can be redeclared and it can also be reinitialized. That means reinitialized means you can change the value of the variable. That means you can also make it as num equals to 20. This is allowed using a var keyword. This is not allowed only in the case of const keyword. Okay, so whenever you try to declare a variable using a var keyword, you can reinitialize the value of the variable. You can freely reinitialize the value of the variable. Okay, you can reinitialize the value of the variable over here. What is second point that it says? You can also redeclare it, right? That means you can redeclare the same variable multiple times by using a var keyword. What is meant by that? So you have declared a var num equals to 10. You can again declare var num equals to 20. Again, you can declare var num equals to, let's say, some other values, TypeScript. You can again declare a var num equals to, let's say, 50 over here. You can again declare a var num equals to, let's say, whatever value that you are trying to discuss or trying to write it in. So this is also allowed in terms of var keyword. And this is one of the reasons why we do not use a var keyword in the modern JavaScript and TypeScript, because it allows us to declare the same variable multiple times. But whatever the last value that you have declared for a variable, that will be considered as the value of the variable. Whatever the last that you have declared for this particular variable name will be considered as a value, the last declared value. Okay, so this will always give us a this will always basically give us a confusion, saying that okay, this will not throw us any kind of error because it allows us to redeclare the same variables. It will not throw us any error, and we might as a programmer or as a test engineer, we might forget that whether we have declared that variable earlier or not, right? So this is also allowed in terms of var keyword. Now, as it allows us in terms of a var keyword to declare the same variable multiple times, let's see what is the issue that it is happening over here. So we have declared a variable which is let variable equals to TypeScript. Inside the curly braces, whenever we try to declare any variable, that basically considered as a local variable. So what we are trying to say is, if condition is true, then go inside this and again declare a variable, not by using let, but by using a var keyword. Again declare a variable using var same variable, which is variable equals to JavaScript. So in the definition of a local scope variable, this considered as a local scope variable, and this is considered as a global scope variable, right? So here, if you see, we generally consider this as a local scope and this as a global scope variable. What we talked about is a global scope variable can be utilized at any point of time, but local scope variable cannot be utilized at later point of time after the end of the curly braces, right? In this case, what is happening is, try to print the variable. Can anyone guess what will be the name of the variable over here?
JavaScript.
What it will display the value?
JavaScript.
TypeScript.
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 Right. Someone said JavaScript over here.
I said because I thought since we are using var, right, it would change the.
Okay. So see, as a programmer, as an engineer also, we consider that, we'll get the value as a TypeScript over here because we consider this as a local variable, right? And as we have not defined it a function inside a function, we have defined it inside the curly braces. This variable that you have defined will override the global variable that we have defined over here. And that happens only in terms of a var keyword. So this variable that you have defined over here will override the global behavior of the variable. That means the global variable that we have declared over here is a variable which is having a TypeScript as a value. Now, as soon as we have defined it inside the curly braces, which we consider it as a local variable, this variable will go and replace the TypeScript to JavaScript over here. And in terms of printing this value, this will return us a value as JavaScript. This will return us a value as JavaScript. the value, it is JavaScript. So whenever we try to declare these kind of variables, and we mostly do these kind of validations inside the test automation or inside the development of the application as well, right? So this will basically replace the global behavior. And whenever at the later point of time, if we try to compare with this particular variable saying that it is equals to TypeScript or not, that will throw us an error. That will throw us an error because this TypeScript have been overridden by the JavaScript over here, right? Due to
Ravi
this
sir,
behavior,
sorry, what happens if we have let in it, right, instead of var? Then it would.
come to that one. I'll come to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll come to that point at the time of discussion of let over here. Okay, so this happens, and because of this behavior, we never use var keyword in terms of modern JavaScript and TypeScript. Okay, so if someone asks you why do we not use a var keyword, you have to give this particular example. You have to give this particular example saying that this is the behavior where this what we consider as a global scope, local scope behavior, local scope variable will override the global behavior over here for the var keyword, and that is why we do not use a var keyword in modern JavaScript and TypeScript. Okay. So that's the second behavior, second point of var keyword. Now, what is third? Third is something which is whenever we declare a variable using a var keyword, it is not mandatory to assign the value of the variable, assign the value of the variable at the time of declaration. Variable at the time of declaration. What is meant by that? That means it says that you can simply declare a variable, let's say num1, and it is not mandatory to define the value of the variable. It is not mandatory to define this. You can define the value of the variable at later point of time as well. You can just define it like that. Okay. So at the time of declaration of a variable by using a var keyword, it is not mandatory to assign the value of the variable. Okay. So these are the 3 points that we have in terms of for all the keywords that we have over here. This was for the var keyword. Now let's see in terms of let keyword what will happen. Second is let keyword. So in terms of a let keyword, the scope is a block scope. For var, the scope was either a global or a functional scope, right? For let keyword, we'll be having a scope as a block scope. That means if you try to declare a variable inside the curly braces, however we have done over here, that will be considered as a local scope variable. If you try to declare outside of the curly braces, that will be considered as a global variable. Example, let we have defined. So let's say k equals to 30. Here we have defined somewhere. And let's say let num2 equals to 30. Let num2 equals to 30. This is a global scope variable. That means you can utilize it at any point of time inside your code or inside your file. You can also use it inside the function. Let's try to create a function over here. I'll give the name as add1. So you can also use this inside the function as well. That means you can simply say it as console.log and then num2. You can do this as well because this considered as a global scope variable, so you can define it anywhere. You can also print it over here as well. Okay, and you can also print it inside the function. You can also utilize it inside the any of the statement that you are trying to write or inside the curly braces. Okay, so in this case, if you see, both of them will give us the same value because it is a global scope variable, so you are free to use at any places over here. This is add1. The function name is add1. So you can see that it has given us 30, and this 30 is coming over here, and this 30 is coming over here, coming from here. Okay, now this is basically whenever you try to declare inside the curly braces, anything that you declare inside the curly braces, either it is a function or it is any curly braces using a loop or a statement or inside anywhere, whenever you try to declare a variable inside the curly braces, that will be considered as a local variable. Example, let num3 equals to 50. Okay. So this is considered as a local variable. You can use this inside the curly braces itself, but outside the curly braces, if you would like to get the value, it will throw us an error saying that num3 is not available. Num3 is not available. This will not only happen for the function. This will not only happen for the function. Let's say it over here something like this, which is we have a if statement, some statement that we have over here. And we have declared a variable which is, let's say, let, and then variable 1 over here. To try to access this, you cannot access outside of this particular curly braces over here. This is also considered as a local variable. So anything you declared by using a let keyword inside the curly braces, either it is a loop or it is a statement, which is if else if statement kind of things, or it is a function inside the curly braces, whenever you try to declare by using a let keyword, that is completely considered as a local scope variable. You cannot use at later point of time after the end of the curly braces. Okay, so that's the first thing, which is a block scope or a global scope. Second is variable declared using a let keyword cannot be redeclared but can be reinitialized. What is meant by reinitialize means you can change the value of the variable. So you can simply change the value of the variable at any point. That is known as reinitialization. Initializing the value of the variable, reinitializing the value of the variable. Okay. This is allowed in terms of a let keyword as well, because we know that when we use a let keyword, that means value of the variable can change at any point of time. But you cannot declare the same variable multiple times. Let's say num3 equals to 100. You cannot declare same variable multiple times over. This is not allowed in terms of let keyword. That means you cannot declare the same variable multiple times. Cannot redeclare the block scope variable, which is num3. Okay, this is not allowed in both JavaScript and TypeScript. This is not allowed. Here as well, you can do the similar things, which is let's say num4 equals to 100. And you can again do not define the same. You cannot define the same variable. This will also sometimes. Okay. So here, when you try to declare the same variable multiple times by using let keyword is not allowed in terms of JavaScript and TypeScript both. But reinitialization is possible. That means you can initialize the value of the variable. Now there was a question, what will happen if we have this, if we declare this by using a let keyword? So we declare this by using a let keyword. I'll just make it as let over here, and we'll change the variable as, let's say, num4 or var1, and we'll also use the similar variable over here, which is var1. Okay. Now you might be having a doubt that it says we cannot redeclare the same variable, but here we are able to redeclare this, right? So these are the two different concepts. This is global variable. This is a local variable. So this local variable will not have any idea that there is something known as var1 that we have already declared. And this global variable var1 will not have any idea that there is something that we have declared var1 as a local scope variable. So this is completely local scope. This is a global scope. Local scope variable you cannot access at later point of time. You can access it inside this one, which you can simply say it as console.log var1 over here. Okay, but here this var1 will give us JavaScript, which is the local var1, and this var1 will always give us TypeScript as a var2 because this will not override. This is purely a local scope variable whenever you try to declare anything inside the curly braces. Okay, now if you try to execute this line of code, you'll see that this is line number 85 is printing us, line number 86 is printing us. Let me also write it over here, line number 86, which is printing us var1, and then line number 91, which is 89. 89, what it is printing, we can check it over here. Now again, execute the similar statement over here. Line number 86 is printing us JavaScript. Line number 89 is printing us TypeScript because this is printing from the global scope variable and this is printing from the local scope variable. Now, one more thing. You might be wondering that why it is not considering a variable which we have declared at global scope, right? So there is a concept. Now, let's say you are from Hyderabad. So let's say, for example, you are from Hyderabad, state of India, right? So if you have applied for a job, which is government job, you will be given a preference inside the Hyderabad because you are a local to Hyderabad, right? Any other state people, if they apply, they'll be getting some kind of, they'll not be given preference because you becomes a non-local. So that is the concept applies over here as well. Whatever we apply in the real life, the similar example applies over here in any of the programming languages. So that is what happened when you declare the same variable. If you have a variable name which is similar at global and local variable, the local variable or the local people will be given preference over there. And that is why here it considered as a local variable, but not the other person which is globally available. Okay, so that is why it is printing us the value from the local scope value, but not the global one. But outside of the things, when you try to print, this will always print us the global one because this will not understand that there is a person which is locally available inside our file. Okay, so I hope it might have given you the answer for the question that you are trying to ask. And the third point, again, it is similar to a var keyword, which is it is not mandatory to assign the value of the variable at the time of declaration. That means it is not mandatory to assign the value over here. You can assign the value at any point of time after the declaration of a variable. Okay, so this is happen in terms of a let keyword. Now, what about const keyword? What about const keyword? So const keyword is also having similar to the let over here. So first is similar to a scope, which is let for let that we have, which is a block scope. Okay, you can change it and see for the let over const keyword over here. So you can do the similar things. Let's say a const over here, var1 equals to this, and you can also try to declare this const, which is var1 equals to this over here. Const var1 equals to this. In this case also, it will do the similar kind of things that it has done in terms of let keyword. That means whenever we try to declare anything inside the block of code, inside the curly braces will be considered as a local scope variable, and whatever we declare outside of the curly braces will be considered as a global scope variable. So in terms of a const, it is similar to, in terms as part of the scoping, it is similar to let keyword. Okay. Second point that we have over here is whenever we try to declare a variable using a const keyword, it cannot be redeclared and also cannot be reinitialized. It also cannot be redeclared and it also cannot be reinitialized. What is that is? A const, you say it as L equals to 10. Const L equals to 10. And you cannot change the value of the variable. that we have seen earlier, right? So you cannot do this. This will throw us an error. L equals to 20. You cannot do it. It means you cannot reinitialize the value of the variable, whatever the variable that you have declared using const keyword. So you can see that it will throw us an error. Cannot assign to L because it is a constant. Okay. Second thing is you cannot redeclare the same variable. It is similar to that we have for the let. You cannot do this kind of things. It says that you cannot redeclare block scope variable. Okay. So this is also not allowed in terms of const, which is similar to our let keyword. In terms of let keyword, it allows the initialization, reinitialization, but redeclaration is not possible. Now the third point is little bit different over here. Okay, so for a const keyword, basically it is mandatory to assign the value of the variable at the time of declaration. It is mandatory to assign the value of the variable at the time of declaration. You cannot do like this, which is const L. You have to assign the value of the variable at the time of declaration. If you see this one, it says that variable L, which is const, by declaring as keyword const, declaration must be initialized. Const declaration must be initialized over here. That means we have to initialize the value of the variable at the time of declaration. Okay. These are the difference that you have to talk about whenever someone asks you the question, what is difference between var, let, and const? If you give them the example, that will be again a better part of the question. So I'll just combine all things at one place so that it will be better for you people to check it out as a part of the content over here. So this is var, this is let, and this is const. Okay. So whenever someone asks you what is difference between var, let, and const, you have to give them all these kind of answers, whatever we have defined inside our session. Okay, so that's about the understanding of the variable, why we do not use a var keyword, and when can we use var, let, and const keyword. Okay, so I'll again come to you people over here. If you have any kind of questions, feel free to ask. I'll look it for if you have any kind of questions inside the Q&A, and then I'll come back to you people as well. So I'm not able to see. I pinged my email, which is Madhu. I pinged my mail ID, but they did not give me access to materials. Yes. So what you can do is going forward, whatever the request that you have, you can probably request on this one. Where is that? The number that I have given you earlier yesterday, on that part, you can basically give the number over here, which is this number. On the last number, which is 76740-75105, you can always ping me for any kind of help. Second is, let me also make every one of you over here as where is that? So probably after the session, I'll make every one of you to also be able to message me inside the group itself. Okay. So if any one of you have not received the document, after I allow you to post the message inside the chat, inside the group itself, you can you can post your message over there. When will we get the access to the recording access? You'll get every day after the sessions, and documents access you'll get as soon as you provide the email address that I have talked about over here. Please allow me to talk, Venki. Yes. So did you raise your hand over here? Yes. So let me allow you, Umesh. I'm also allowing you over here to talk, and other people that were asking, which is so I have allowed a few of you, and you are free to ask the questions. But let me go through it for the next 5 minutes. Let me go through with the Q&A, and then I'll come back to you. So please allow me. Okay, still not able to hear. So I do not have access to shared drive. You can please share me your email address either directly to me on my number, or I'll allow everyone to post the message inside the group, and then you can do that. Screen you are sharing is very different than what you are explaining, is it? 9:16. So it was around a year, around hour ago. When not installing it is even not installing it is working for me. I do not understand this. This one I have basically given you a command yesterday. You can just check inside our recorded session in terms of our yesterday session that I have given the command to fix this particular issue. I'm also posting here right away. If any one of you are getting script is not enabled or not recognized kind of things over here as a CMD let, you can get this fixed by running this particular command. Okay, I'm getting this error. So Prashant, you can fix with the command that I've given over here. Please ask them to store recordings in Drive, not able to manage multiple links. For this, I'll check how they are able to access it, how they're managing inside the Zoho, and then I'll come back to this point. I did not receive any document. I have shared email address. Suresh, as I've suggested, you can also provide inside. Nimisha, you can probably ping me directly your email address, or you can also ping inside the group. I'll give you the access. Are there only 3 keywords in the variable for JavaScript and TypeScript? Yes, using these 3 keywords, you will be able to access the variables, allow the variables. Could you show example of variables, JavaScript and TypeScript? We have just, I believe like this might have answered. So where was used in, now we don't use it, right? So where was basically used before ES6 engine till 2015. You can still use, but that is not a good way to write the program by using a var keyword. So that is what I said. We cannot use it. Still, we did not get Google Drive link to refer all the notes. Prashant, as I said, suggested, you can just share me your email address and I'll provide you the access. And the shortcut key to use for executing the TypeScript file, you have to type the command that we are trying to type the command over here. Like Java, why don't we need to create a class? I believe that I've answered. If var is a local as well as global, then why we stopped using it? What's the reason? I've answered it. Shelly, if you're still having some kind of questions, you can come back to me again. But I believe it might have answered you.
Yes, you have answered.
Why we need to use TSX? I have, given this answer multiple times in our first session as well as in the demo session. So TSX is used to execute the TypeScript file. TSX is used to execute the TypeScript file. So shortcut for console.log is not working. Yeah, CLG might not work for you. I have done some kind of setup inside my system. That is why it is using. But for few of the times when you try to use CLG, probably in the initial stage might not be visible for everyone. Let us allow to declare multiple values. Let also allows to declare multiple values, right? So multiple values, yes, but the same declaration you cannot do. What is function? Is it similar to method? Function and method are same. Again, this is from Suresh. Suresh, you can also type the command that I have given over here in the program. It is given if true. What condition are validating over here? So I have just directly written the true. That means we have directly got the condition result itself. Okay, so you can write any kind of condition. Condition will return a Boolean value, either true or false. So I have directly given a true over here. That is why the condition we have not written anything over here. This is from Anand. So for those notes will be shared. Yes, you can just share me your email address. I'll provide you the access. I believe few of you have already received who have pinged me yesterday. Can you please explain the scope of const variable once again? So scope of const is similar to the let. That means where is that? So scope of const is similar to a let. That means whenever you try to declare a variable outside of the curly braces, the scope will be a block. Inside of the curly braces, the scope will be block scope. Outside of the curly braces will be considered as a global scope. That means if you try to declare a variable by using inside the curly braces, either use inside the statement or you are using inside the functions, every time it will be considered as a local variable. But outside of the curly braces can be outside of the function, outside of the statements and all, will be considered as a global scope variable. Okay. I have not received. I have also not received. Priyanka, you can share me the email address. Please share your personal number once. So this is my personal number, which is 7674075. Can you again explain const shortly? So that is what the const is basically the declared the scope used to be block scope. That means when you declare a variable inside the curly braces, will have a block scope. That means that will be considered as a local scope. Outside of the curly braces will be considered as a global scope. Now, variable, whenever you try to declare by using a const, you cannot redeclare the same variable multiple times, and you also cannot reinitialize it because it is a constant variable. A constant variable becomes a final. That means you cannot redeclare the same variable multiple times, and you cannot reinitialize the value of the variable. Also, it is mandatory to assign the value of the variable as it says that it is a constant. As I was trying to give you the example, that whenever there is a final match, after that there will not be any kind of matches over there, right? So that is what the constant is also over here. That means constant will not be accepting any other values, and it will not also accept the redeclaration part. Okay. I think that's about the question from the yes, Framil, I'll create the GitHub account for us, and then we'll share you the GitHub account over here. Okay. So any other question that you people have?
Yeah.
Any type?
Yes, Praveen, just a quick question I have. Like when you're executing, right, you're writing TSX and all, calling out the file name from the terminal. Could we execute if we have a from the Visual Studio Code itself, like run the code? Like if we install it.
Right. If you can install this, then you will be able to.
Is the extension called?
But for this is basically what you are trying to do is you are trying to write a program, so it will not be able to understand what you are trying to run. Basically, you can also run it from here. This run code that you see, this will also try to run this, but there will be certain issues in this because it will not be able to identify something that you have written over here and so on. Okay, so it's always better to filter out by using the TSX itself. This one will get the TS nodes over here. TS node is another part, and TSX is another module. So whenever you see this run command or run code, will basically by default take a TS node module, not the TSX.
Which is not a good idea, right? So TSX would be a better option to run.
TSX, it used to be better options.
Okay, and for Java, JavaScript node, right? To calling it as node and
Right.
the
Node
file
node
space file name in the terminal. Yeah, thank you.
Praveen, we don't have like in the Eclipse right click run test-ng something like that we will be having in the Eclipse. No, we don't have
so
like that.
in terms of Playwright as well, you will not get that kind of options. You will have some kind of option where you can just do a run code. When we go for a Playwright, you will get an option to run over here. You will also get an option to run inside this one itself. Like you'll get a run option over here to run the test case. Okay. But we do not have that option in
It's not a
Visual
breakpoint.
Right, that's not a breakpoint.
Okay.
So we do not have any option. You can simply you might be having this run code, but this run code will by default take the TypeScript whatever we have given over here, which is using a TS node. So that's not always a better option to go ahead. You can simply type the command and that will be working over here. Okay, so this is
Praveen, I have not installed that JavaScript TS6 snippet plugin. Still, it's working for me.
sorry, can you please speak once again? It was very low.
Yeah, you told like to install the extension, right? JavaScript TS6 code snippet.
Mhm.
I've not
Yes.
installed it. Still, it's working.
That's fine. That's fine. That is what I said. Like, if it is not working, then you can install that. Sometimes by default, it nowadays in the latest version of this one, which is what is this? Visual Studio Code. They have given like even the support of their Copilot. That means AI support also have been given. So sometimes like they'll give you the automatic support. If it is not identifying, then you can go ahead and install the plugin. Okay. So any other question that you have? I'm trying to create a GitHub repo over here that I'll give you the access to. Not access to, but I'll share you the URL in a couple of minutes. Then you will probably be able to see all the codes that will be going forward sections. Over.
Yeah, and we can clone directly from Visual Studio extension, right? Like, and you could send the GitHub.
Yeah, you can clone that as well. So this is the basically URL that is from GitHub. You can also access all the codes going forward as well. I'll be able to provide it over here. Pramila, I'm not sure like whether I heard you or not, but if you have any question, feel free to ask. Will the recording expire? No, it will have lifetime access. We use npm command to run the files. Where did we use npm? Over here right now. Deepa, did we use npm anytime till now? Not sure. So what are the different ID you can use any type of ID. It is not restricted to the Visual Studio Code. You can use any type of ID.
Praveen, just a quick question. NPM is a node package manager which comes with along with when we download Node. That's what it is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But that's the thing I was thinking. So until now, so we have been using Node in the terminal, but not the NPM command, right? Yeah. But for the playwright, why did we use NPM playwright init, right? Something command which you sent, right?
We use npx.
npx, okay. Right. What's the difference between npm is a node package manager, understood? What is npx?
Npx is node packaging executor.
Executor, okay. Right. We need to have that in order to install playwright. Okay.
No, we do not require that. That will automatically come along with the playwright.
Okay, npm, right? npx. Right. Okay, yeah, got it.
Praveen, I have a question.
Yes, Vijay Kumar, you can use this code to fix that issue. That should fix your issue, whatever you have given. I've not get the global variable value overridden by the local one using varchar. Can you please explain me again? Definitely, I'll explain you in our next session, which will again be tomorrow. So in the first few minutes, I'll try to explain how it is basically able to override the code. Okay, yes, please go ahead.
Yes, Praveen. Okay, in Visual Studio, okay, in Playwright we can right click and we can use that run tested cursor, right?
In terms of Playwright, you'll get an option to run over here. You can get the
okay. After right clicking also, okay, I'm able to see run tested cursor, debug tested cursor, run testing current file, debug testing current file, all these things.
Okay. So do you use any kind of plugin over there?
Basic plugin only I'm using, just install the extra plugin like testing all these things, nothing more than that.
Yeah,
but
there are different
kinds of test directory as a file, that's it.
Right. So there are a lot of plugins available, but I'll show you like how do we run this. You can also run it from here as well. Inside this, you'll get all the options to run the test cases from here as well. You can also run the test case. So you can go to the lab or testing that it defines over here. And inside this, you'll get option to run from here as well. Also, you can see it, this option you'll get to run inside the test case. You'll get this option to click and run the test cases in terms of the playwright. Okay, so you can simply click this and it will start running whatever we have to run. So you can see like it started running, it launched something, and it is basically the code for multiple windows handling. Okay, so that's about it. Any other question that we have for now?
Yes, I have a question, Ravi.
Yes.
So you explained about this npx command that we use to run when we use playwright, right? So I have observed that the same command is used in Cypress also. So is it a common npm or node package manager command that we use?
NPM is a common. NPM is common whenever you work with JavaScript or TypeScript. You can use NPM by either you're using any of the tools and technology. That doesn't mean if you're using a JavaScript or TypeScript, you can use NPM at any.
No, I'm talking about the npx command.
NPX to execute the test, Playwright has given because it have been developed using a TypeScript. Cypress has also done the similar kind of thing, so you can use the similar things along with the Cypress as well. So the same command are available over there.
So it is given by the playwright. It's not within the npm package.
It's not within the NPM package.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Any other question from anyone else? I'll wait for 2 more minutes and then see if you have any questions.
Praveen, can we practice this let, where, and constant? Any examples over there in the Google so we can able to practice more questions on that?
You mean interview questions you are talking about, or how is it?
It's like to general. Just I started
Right.
right now.
So it is just a variable. It is just a variable. However, you have gone through inside a session over here, right? Whatever the things that you have seen over here, you can just go ahead and type these kind of things to understand how it basically works. There are not much things in like, for the practice purpose of the varlet and const. It is just to see how does it work basically to define the variable using all the 3 keywords. So you can play however we have gone over here in this way, and that will make you understand it in a better way. If you have any kind of questions, you can again come back to me. But for the practice purpose, this will be enough to understand let, const, and var keyword.
So
Whatever
this has been given in any docs or over in the Google Drive or something?
this is this I have just posted inside the GitHub. I have also shared the GitHub link over here, so you can access from here as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, let me access that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Any other question that we have?
Hi, Praveen. Praveen, I have a basic doubt. Like as you mentioned, for the variable